Hey nerds. So I was going through my collection of the past 2, 3 weeks, and I stumbled upon a commander that I had nearly forgotten about. Now, this commander I mentioned in a video a while ago, but I played it like once or twice and I took it apart because I weren't playing quite as much and I wanted to use the sleeves for another deck. But I wanted to revisit Bess Nourisher. This 3 mana commander might look really unassuming at first, but it is a powerhouse of an aggro deck that can easily start knocking people out of the game by like turn 5, and because of its restriction, it is really easy to build on a budget. My list isn't budget, but I don't have a ton of expensive cards in there, so a few easy cuts and some cards from the mana base, you can easily bring this deck down to under $100 or even $50. So we'll get into that at the end of the video. Best Soul Nourisher is a 3 mana 1/1 human citizen that costs 1, a green and a white, that says whenever one or more other creatures with base power and toughness 1/1 enter the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Best Soul Nourisher. And whenever Bess attacks, each other creature you control with base power and toughness 1/1 gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is a number of +1/+1 counters on Bess. So this deck is pretty straightforward. We just want to play a bunch of 1/1s to grow Bess. And let's kick things off with some of my favorite 1/1s in all of Magic, the Mana Dorks. First up, Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, and Fyndhorn Elves. These are all 1 mana 1/1s that tap to add a green. They're staples in pretty much every green deck, so it's no surprise that they have a home here. Avacyn's Pilgrim and Boreal Druid are next. Avacyn Pilgrim taps to add a white, Boreal Druid taps to add a colorless. These next two cards actually go into another category as well for +1/+1 counters, but I'm putting them in the Mana Dorks. We have Kami of Whispered Hopes and Catilda Dawnheart Prime. Kami of Whispered Hopes is a 3 mana 1/1 spirit that if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a permanent you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on that permanent instead. And then you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is Kami of Whispered Hope's power. This effect is great, especially with Bess, because Bess doesn't require our creatures to attack in order to pump, just for her to attack. So if we swing, Kami can then get pumped, and then we can have a bunch of mana for post-combat main phase. Catilda Dawnheart Prime is a 2 mana 1/1 human warlock that has protection from werewolves, which I don't think is going to be relevant too often. Human creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any of this creature's colors, and then you can pay 4, a green and a white to tap it and put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. The rest of the ramp is pretty straightforward with Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. These are no-brainers and are in a lot of decks. I could see cutting them. If you do, I don't blame you. And then Sakura Tribe Elder and Wood Elves. Sakura Tribe Elder is a 2 mana 1/1 that you can sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put that card on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And then Wood Elves is a 3 mana 1/1 that when it enters, you search your library for a forest card, and you put that card on the battlefield, then shuffle. These are staples in a lot of green decks. They're 1/1, so they work great in here. And even though our commander is 3 mana, we still want to make sure we're getting lands into play so we can play some of our bigger threats or cast multiple spells a turn. Next up's our removal. I of course have staples like Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares in the deck, but those are pretty boring. They're just good, efficient removal pieces. The ones I love talking about are Aura Mutation and Pest Infestation. Aura Mutation is a 2 mana instant that destroys target enchantment. Then you create X green 1/1 Saproling creature tokens, where X is that enchantment's mana value. So I know we only want to make ideally 1 token at a time, but the fact that we can get any sort of 1/1 stapled onto removal is just so good in this deck. The same is true for Pest Infestation. It's a sorcery that you can pay XX in green, destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments, and create twice X 1/1 black and green pest creature tokens, with when this creature dies you gain 1 life. Because it says destroy up to target X artifacts or enchantments, you don't have to use this as removal, and you could just use this as a mana outlet to make a whole bunch of 1/1 pests to swing with. The other on-theme removal we have in the deck is Haywire Might and Lion Sash. So Haywire Might is a 1 mana 1/1 insect that when it dies you gain 2 life, and then you can pay a green to sacrifice it and exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. So it's a 1/1 that we can attack with. If it dies we gain the life, and it's exile removal for any pesky indestructible artifacts or enchantments. This is actually really good against the Theros gods because while their devotion isn't turned on, they're not creatures, so you can actually exile them with Haywire Might. And then Lion Sash is a 2 mana 1/1 equipment cat that you could pay a white to exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a permanent card, put a +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash. Equipped creatures get +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash, and has Reconfigure for 2, so you can equip it for 2 mana. You always want to make sure you have Graveyard Hate, and this is essentially Graveyard Removal. It's also a 1/1 creature, and it has counter synergies, so it's an auto include in this deck for me. And rounding out our removal is Kabira Takedown and Farewell. Kabira Takedown is a 2-mana instant that it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. It's also a land on the back, which is why it's in the deck. And then Farewell, everyone knows this card. It's a 6-mana sorcery. Choose one or more. Exile all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and graveyards. It's also Graveyard Hate. We don't necessarily want to exile all of our creatures, but there are going to be games where we're just behind on board and we need to reset, and because of how cheap all of our stuff is, it'll be easier for us to rebuild than our opponents. But in order to rebuild after a board wipe, we need to actually have cards in hand. So let's do card draw next. We have the staples like Skull Clamp, Guardian Project, and Welcoming Vampire. Skull Clamp's a 1-mana equipment that equipped creature gets +1/-1. Whenever the equipped creature dies, you draw 2 cards, and you can equip it for 1. You should know what Skull Clamp does. It's a staple in a lot of aristocrats or token decks. It can draw you a whole bunch of cards. So if you are going to board wipe, you can just start clamping away your creatures. Guardian Project's a 4-mana enchantment that whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, you draw a card. We're in Commander and we're not playing any creatures we can play multiples of, so we'll pretty much always draw a card off of this. And then Welcoming Vampire is a 3-mana 2/3 flyer that whenever one or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. This ability only triggers once each turn. This is great, especially if we can make tokens on other players' turns, because it will trigger on our opponent's turns as well. It isn't a 1/1, which is a downside in the deck, but we have a way around that in the finishers, which we'll get to. Speaking of 1/1 card draw, Toski, Bearer of Secrets is an absolute powerhouse in this deck. It's a 4-mana 1/1 squirrel. This spell can't be countered, it has indestructible, it attacks each combat if able, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is an absolute great creature in the deck, because we can attack with Bess and Toski. Toski gets massive and has indestructible, and then if we hit at all, we get to just draw cards. The last pieces of card draw are going to be Rite of Harmony and Shamanic Revelation. Rite of Harmony is an instant for 2 mana that whenever a creature or enchantment enters the battlefield under your control this turn, you draw a card, and has flashback for 2 a green and a white. This is essentially a fixed Glimpse of Nature because it's not quite as busted as it. You could also put Glimpse of Nature in this deck. And then Shamanic Revelation is a 5-mana sorcery. You draw a card for each creature you control, and then you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So you can attack with Bess and then do this post-combat, so your entire board is pumped, and then you can gain a whole bunch of life and then also draw a whole bunch of cards. But in order to have a bunch of creatures we can draw off Shamanic Revelation to recover from our board wipe, we're going to need tokens. So let's get into our token generators next. First up is Adeline Resplendent Cathar. So it's a 3-mana Star 4 legendary human knight. It has vigilance, and its power is equal to the number of creatures you control. And whenever you attack for each opponent, create a 1/1 white human creature token that's tapped and attacking a player or planeswalker they control. This is really great. I mean, we only get 1 counter on Bess, but those creatures will come in and then Bess can pump them. And Adeline doesn't have to attack, so we can just leave her back as a blocker. Next up is Boss's Chauffeur. It's a 5-mana 0/0 elf citizen that enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to 1, plus the number of other creatures you control. It has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on Boss's Chauffeur, and then when it dies, you create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token for each +1/+1 counter on it. Unlike Bess, if we put 15 tokens into play, Boss's Chauffeur will get 15 +1/+1 counters. Now, of course, it isn't a 1/1 itself, so Bess won't pump it, but this thing will get really big, so I love holding this back as a blocker, because even if it dies, we still can get so much value off of it. Next is Canoptic Scarab Swarm. It's a 4-mana 1/1 artifact insect creature with flying. When it enters, exile target player's graveyard. For each artifact or land card exiled this way, create a 1/1 colorless insect artifact creature token with flying. I was between putting this here and in the removal category, but I like using this as a token generator more than necessarily graveyard hate. I mean, obviously it does both, but I'm going to target the person where I can get the most 1/1s from this thing. It's also great that it makes tokens with evasion, so that way we can easily knock someone out if they don't have any creatures with reach or flying. Next is Maja Beretagard Protector. It's a 5-mana 2/3 human warrior that has other creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you create a 1/1 human warrior creature token. It's repeatable ways to make tokens when we hit land drops, works great with Sacred Tribe Elder or Wood Elves if we hit those later in the game. This card is definitely on the chopping block, but I like having some easy ways of making tokens like this, so for now it's going to go ahead and stay in the deck. Reese the Redeemed is a 1-mana 1/1 elf warrior that you can pay 2 and a Selesnya hybrid, so a green or a white, to tap and create a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token. That rate isn't great, but we care more about that second ability, where it's 4 and double Selesnya hybrid, so any combination of green and white. For each creature token you control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So if we have 15 1/1 creature tokens, we then get 15 more of them. And because Reese is a 1-mana 1/1, we can drop this thing early and slowly start putting out 1/1s if we need to, or we can save it for a late game and just start doubling our tokens every single turn. Next up is Scoot Swarm. It's a 3-mana 1/1 insect with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. Even though we don't have a ton of ways to get additional lands each turn, this can get out of hand very quickly, especially late game or after a board wipe, where if we have enough lands, we can play Scoot Swarm, play a land, and then like a Wood Elves or Sacra Tribe Elder, and suddenly our board is growing very quickly. Next up is Tendershoot Dryad. It's a 5-mana 2/2 Dryad with Ascend, so if you control 10 or more permanents, you have the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of each upkeep, you create a 1/1 green sapling creature token, and saplings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. So on every single opponent's turn, we get a 1/1 and on our own, and getting 10 or more permanents in play is not going to be hard, especially in green-white. So these are essentially 3/3 saplings, but because their base power and toughness is 1/1, it'll trigger Bess every single time. Also works great with Boss's Chauffeur, some other creatures we'll get into later. Rounding up the creatures that make tokens, we have Torrent's Fist of the Angel. A 3-mana 2/2 human cleric that has training. Whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you create a 1/1 green and white human soldier creature token with training. So we have these 1/1 tokens that are attacking with Bess. They'll get a +1/+1 counter, and then Bess will go ahead and pump them. Again, this is a great repeatable way to make creatures. It's on cast, which isn't as good as like entering, but we still get a single token every single time, which is exactly what we're looking for. There are also some enchantments that make tokens. We have Legion's Landing. It's a 1-mana legendary enchantment that when it enters, you make a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink, and then when you attack with 3 or more creatures, you transform Legion's Landing, and it becomes a Danto the First for it. It's a legendary land that you can tap to add a white, or you can pay 2 and a white and tap this to make a 1/1 vampire creature token with lifelink. It's not the most efficient way to make 1/1s, but it is a repeatable way to do it on a land, so it's harder to interact with, and it's nice that the tokens have lifelink. Next up is Rabble Rousing. It's a 5-mana enchantment with Hideaway 5. So when this enchantment enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, and then put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Then, if you control 10 or more citizens, or 10 or more creatures, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. This is really great because we have some expensive finishers in the deck that we're going to want to cheat into play, and this lets us ignore timing restrictions, which means we can just cast this in the middle of combat. It's a great card to play. It is 5 mana, but it can just win you the game in some situations. Next is Skrelv's Hive. It's a 2-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, and you create a 1/1 colorless might artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. It also has Corrupted. As long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control with Toxic have lifelink. That's not usually relevant. We're not trying to kill with Infect. It's in the deck because it makes a 1/1 every single turn, and we're incentivized to attack with these because we can't hold them back as blockers. We are not trying to win with Infect in this deck. Well, that's not totally true, but again, once we get to the finishers, you'll see what I'm talking about. We also have Oketra's Monument. It's a 3-mana legendary artifact that says white creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. It's also a great ramp piece, and because it's whenever we cast any creature, not just white creatures, and because it makes 1 token at a time, it's even better in the deck since we can trigger Bess multiple times a turn. I also included March of the Multitudes. It's an instant that costs X, green, white, white. It has Convoke, and you create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. While we don't necessarily double how many creatures we have, we can easily take 10 or 15 tokens, convoke this, and if we're using our regular mana for the colored part, we then get 15 1/1s with lifelink. This is just a really powerful card that makes a ton of bodies that want to get pumped by Bess when we attack, and having lifelink is great because we can defend ourselves from a crackback. And the last major token generator I'm going to talk about is Grand Crescendo. This is X white white instant. You create X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. That's cool. Oh, creatures you control also gain indestructible until end of turn. So we can pay 2 mana, not put anything into X, and give our entire board indestructible. Or if we have extra mana, we can also make a whole bunch of 1/1s, and then give all our creatures indestructible at instant speed. This card is absolutely powerful, it is great in this deck, and that leads me right into the protection spells. These are cards that we're going to want to play in order to protect our board or our commander. First up, we'll talk about Mother of Ruins. It's a 1 mana 1/1 cleric that we can tap. Target creature you control gains protection from a color of your choice until end of turn. We also have 3 instant ways of giving our creatures indestructible with Heroic Intervention, Inspiring Call, and Unsbreakable Formation. Heroic Intervention's a 2 mana instant, permanents we control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Inspiring Call is a 3 mana instant, we would draw a card for each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Then those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. So if our tokens don't have counters, this won't protect them, but it's still a cheap way to protect our commander and whatever other cards we happen to have counters on. Unbreakable Formation's a 3 mana instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn, which is great, but it has addendum, so if you cast the spell during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures and they gain vigilance until end of turn. So it's also a pseudo finisher where we can just pump our entire board, give them vigilance indestructible, and swing in. Now the final piece of protection is one of my favorite cards of all time, and a card that I think should see a lot more play than it does, Obscuring Haze. It's a 3 mana instant that says if we control our commander, you may cast the spell without paying its mana cost, and prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control. It's a one-sided fog that prevents all damage from any source, not just combat damage. This has won me more games than I care to count, not even just in this deck, but in Commander as a whole. A free fog is just something people don't expect when they have to swing out with you and they have exact lethal, and then you can knock them out on the next turn. Another way to protect your life total is by just getting more life. So I have Essence Warden and Soul Warden in the deck. These are 1 mana 1/1s that say whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. This is a great way to pad your life total, especially if you're against another token strategy. And then I also have Lunarch Veteran and Prosperous Innkeeper, which trigger only when your creatures enter. I've thought about building a more Soul Sisters version of Bess, but I think there are better Soul Sister commanders out there than just this. But I wanted to include some of my favorite 1/1s, and I love these cards so much, so that's why they made the cut. Now, if you really need your life gain cards, or some other creatures, or some finishers we're going to get into shortly, I also included some tutors. Eldamri's Call and Recruiter of the Guard. Eldamri's Call is a 2 mana instant that you can search your library for a creature card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. While Recruiter of the Guard is a 1/1 creature that when it enters, you may search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And because the deck is mostly 1/1s, this can get pretty much every creature in the deck, all but about 4 of them. Some of the best creatures you can get with these tutors would be Luminarch Aspirant, Pure Imaginative Rascal, and Rosy Cotton of Southlane. Luminarch Aspirant's a 2 mana 1/1 human cleric that at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It's another way to pump Bess every single turn. We have Pure Imaginative Rascal. It's a 3 mana 1/1 human. If one or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, that many +1 of each of those kinds of counters are put on that permanent instead. Basically, this is only like for +1/+1 counters in the deck. We don't have, I don't think, any other types of counters. So it's a hardened scales on a creature that can be tutored up. It's really good, and when this enters, if Bess is in play, Bess would get 2 counters. And Rosie's a 3 mana 1/1 halfling peasant. When it enters, you create a food token, and then whenever you create a token, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature other than Rosie. So if you make 15 tokens, you can put 15 +1/+1 counters on Bess, and then Bess would get the single counter from all 15 creatures entering. This is a great way to quickly grow Bess by doing things that you're already doing. Of course, I also had Hardened Scales and Branching Evolution. Hardened Scales is a 1-mana enchantment that if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on it instead. This is a staple in pretty much every counters deck. It's super cheap, mana-wise and dollar-wise, actually. So it's an auto-include here. And then Branching Evolution just got reprinted, might have been about a year ago, maybe even more recently. It's a 3-mana enchantment if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control. Twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on that creature instead. So with Bess, it essentially works as a Hardened Scales, but if you have like a Hardened Scales and a Branching Evolution and a Kami Whispered Hopes out, you can get a ton of counters on creatures really quickly. And by growing our board, we can now use our finishers to close out the game. We have Champion of Lambholt, Praetorhoof Behemoth, and Mirror Entity as our creature finishers. Champion of Lemholt says creatures with power less than champion's power can't block creatures you control, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So it's a 1/1 that gets counters as other creatures and tokens enter, and then it gives our entire board unblockable, especially when we attack with Bess, and then we pump this thing even more. Craterhoof Behemoth just got a reprint, so if you want one, I would definitely pick one up now. It's only about 10 bucks. It's an 8 mana 5/5 beast with haste that says when this creature enters, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. This is an obviously great finisher, and it's really good with rabble rousing, where if we're able to get this under the hideaway card, we can cast this for free during combat. And then we also have Mirror Entity. It's a 3 mana 1/1 shapeshifter changeling that you can pay X, and until end of turn, creatures you control have base power and toughness XX and gain all creature types. Now, you might be thinking, how is this actually a finisher? Well, a cute trick we can do is, let's say we have Craterhoof or some other creatures that don't have base power 1/1. We can pay 1 mana, give all of our creatures base power 1/1, then we attack with Bess. Bess then pumps our entire board. After the buff is applied, we can then pay a ton of mana into X, let's say 5 or 6, and we can give all our creatures, after they've been buffed, 5 or 6 base power and toughness. So it's a quick way to just pump our entire board and then overpower them. There's some other really cool cards we can put under Hideaway, or just cast outright. Beastmaster Ascension, Halo Fountain, and Legion Loyalty. Beastmaster Ascension is a 3 mana enchantment that says, whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension. As long as Beastmaster's Ascension has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. So this also works with Peer. If we have Peer out and this, we do get 2 quest counters instead of 1 for each creature that's attacks. This card doesn't give our creatures trample or anything, but giving them +5/+5 baseline is really good. Halo Fountain's a 3 mana white artifact that we can pay a white, tap, and untap a tapped creature we control to create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. So this gives at least one creature pseudo vigilance, or we can pay white to tap it and then untap 2 tapped creatures we control to draw a card. It's also card draw, which is great, so it's token generation and card draw on 1 card, love it. But the last ability is we can pay 5 white, tap it, and then untap 15 tapped creatures we control to win the game. So if we have rabble rousing in play and this is under it, we can attack with our entire board, cheat in Halo Fountain at instant speed, immediately pay the 5 white, untap 15 creatures, and win the game. Now that's going to be hard to do admittedly, but it is something to keep in mind, and I love having instant win cons like this, where if it's late enough in the game and we draw it, and we have 8 mana available, which we probably do, you can just win. And Legion's Loyalty is an 8 mana enchantment that gives our creatures Myriad. So whenever our creature attacks an opponent, we get an extra copy of that creature for each other opponent. So if we attack one opponent and there's 2 more opponents, we would get 2 extra tokens. These tokens don't stick around, and this is 8 mana for an enchantment, but it is a really fun enchantment to have, especially when you're attacking with either Soul Sister cards or creatures that when they enter, they do things. This card is an absolute powerhouse, and it's really fun to also hide away under rabble rousing. The last 3 win cons we have are non-permanent spells, so we have Akroma's Will, Overwhelming Stampede, and Triumph of the Hordes. Akroma's Will is a 4 mana instant. It says choose one. If you control a commander, you can cast the spell. You may choose both. Creatures you control gain Flying, Vigilance, and Double Strike until end of turn. Creatures you control gain Lifelink, Indestructible, and Protection from all colors until end of turn. So if we cast this, we usually just win the game on the spot with Bess out, because our creatures are basically unkillable aside from maybe Settle the Wreckage. They gain Lifelink, Indestructible, Double Strike, Flying, can't be blocked. It's so many keywords that you just overwhelm your opponent and win immediately. And it can also be protection spell if you absolutely need it to be. Overwhelming Stampede is a 5 mana sorcery. It does a budget Craterhoof. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So if Bess is your biggest creature, you tap that, Bess, and all your creatures get bigger, and then you attack with Bess, and then they get pumped again based on how many counters Bess has. Card's really good at finishing out games, and for only 5 mana, I think it's definitely worth including at any tier. And then Triumph of the Hordes is a 4 mana sorcery. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect until end of turn. This card is great. It's expensive, and if you don't want one with infect, I don't blame you, but this is a very inexpensive way to close out the game as early as like turn 4, turn 5. So that's why I've included it in my list. But if you're looking for budget swaps, don't worry, I got you. As always, you can find both lists, the budget and the original, down in the video description below. The budget list will have all of the swaps in the sideboard and all of the cuts in the considering board. The first budget swaps I would make would be cutting Legion's Landing, Wreath to Redeem, and Canoptic Scarab Swarm for Mercy Killing, Windswift Slice, and Entrapment Maneuver. These are all instant speed token generators that can turn a buffed 1/1 token into even more tokens or just remove a problematic threat. I love that these are instant speed and all pretty inexpensive at 3 and 4 mana. Next, I would cut Pier, Aldamri's Call, and Branching Evolution, and add in Conclave Mentor, Sigil Captain, and Keleth's Sunmane Familiar. Conclave Mentor is another hardened scale effect that also gains you life when it dies, so it's a great replacement for Pier. Sigil Captain buffs all your 1/1s as they enter, even tokens, and while this isn't a 1-to-1 swap for what a tutor does, generally on a budget I'm cutting tutors, so this is what I would replace it with. And Keleth will buff Bess when you attack with her, and while Branching Evolution is definitely great in the deck, I think this is just another way to add +1/+1 counters, and it's really hard to replace that exact effect, so I think this is the best substitute for it. Next, I would cut Essence Warden, Soul Warden, and Recruiter of the Guard for Dragon Sniper, Healer's Hawk, and Twinblade Geist. All the replacements are cheap creatures that have great keywords like either Double Strike or Flying and Lifelink, so we still get the additional life gain from the lifelink effects, but they're also great attackers, while Twinblade Geist has the added benefit of becoming an Oral later on if we cast it for its disturb cost, so we can give Bess or another creature Double Strike. Next, I would cut Skull Clamp and Guardian Project for Helpful Hunter and Spirited Companion. They draw cards in their 1/1, so that's as good as we're going to get. These are the two harder cards to replace with Skull Clamp and Guardian Project. They're pretty much staples in a lot of decks, so if you can afford the extra money to get them, I would highly recommend you picking up a copy of Skull Clamp and or Guardian Project. Next, I would swap Mother of Runes and Heroic Intervention for Olicid of Life's Bounty and Rootborn Defenses. Life's Bounty does a similar thing to Mother of Runes, but you have to sacrifice it, but it does also have lifelink, so that's great if you're attacking with it, and Rootborn Defenses is another way to protect all of your creatures, and you can also populate a token, so you just get one extra 1/1 sometimes, which, hey, better than nothing. Next, I would cut Oketra's Monument and Tendershoot Dryad for Queen Alenia of Roddick and Quinoa Qui Gourmet. These both make additional tokens whenever we make tokens, and that they also happen to be 1/1s, which is great. You still only get one Best trigger since it's a replacement effect, but listen, we can always take more tokens. Tendershoot Dryad isn't too expensive at the time of recording, about $2 and change, so you could even cut just one land to put Tendershoot back in, and I definitely think it's worth including. It is a really powerful card, but for budget considerations, I like having my mana work more, so that's why I decided to cut it. Next, I would cut a Chroma's Will and Grand Crescendo for Copperhorn Scout and Grateful Apparition. Copperhorn Scout gives all of your other creatures vigilance essentially when it attacks. Not quite, but close enough, while Grateful Apparition has evasion and a good effect. It's not a true replacement for Grand Crescendo, but it's a hard effect to really replace all that efficiently, and it needs to be cut for budgetary reasons, and I think this is a good replacement for it. Next, I would cut Boreal Druid and Turntimber Symbiosis for Galagreators and Tangled Florahedron. Galagreators has useful abilities whenever creatures enter, and it's a 1/1, while Tangled Florahedron is a mana dork or a top land depending on what you need. Next, I would cut Craterhoof, Triumph of the Hordes, and Beastmaster Ascension, and instead play Enraze Forerunners, Wild Beastmaster, and Cultivator of Blades. Enraze is the closest thing we have to a budget Craterhoof, but again, Craterhoof is already coming way down in price, so definitely pick one up. Wild Beastmaster and Cultivator of Blades are powerful overrun effects that we need to attack with them, but that's okay. Now there is a quick rules note. If Beastmaster or Blade are removed while their ability is on the stack, you use their last known power to determine the value of X, and the ability checks for their power when it resolves. So since they're 1/1s, you can actually have Bess's ability trigger first, pumping them, and then when their ability resolves, you then pump your entire board again. Next, I would cut Halo Fountain and Farewell for Kamal's Will and Austere Command. Kamal's Will is a powerful instant speed way to win the game seemingly out of nowhere. You can animate all your lands, and then they have Indestructible. And on top of that, Bess can then pump them. You have to do this before you declare attackers, of course, but I think that's okay. You can do it at the start of combat. And of course, Austere Command is just a really good budget replacement for Farewell. Farewell, no doubt, is very powerful, but Austere Command can be a one-sided board wipe, or remove any problematic artifacts that might be affecting you. And then the last two cuts I'd make would be Temple Garden and Wooden Bastion for a Forest and a Plains. They're expensive lands. If you have them, great. If not, basics are fine, or maybe some tapped duel. I would love to hear your thoughts on this commander, this deck tech, the style of video, and what's been a commander you've enjoyed playing with down in the comment section below. As always, like I said before, you can find a link to this deck and the budget version in the video description, and I have a Discord server now where you can come hang out with community members, get deck help, or just kind of vibe. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all that good stuff. Ring the bell to get notifications when all my videos go live. And make sure to check out my other videos shown on screen here. Alrighty, nerds, I'll see you in the next one.